they will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going
good.
on.
Iran will pay a price.
With American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to him a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign
the Biden senile attacks aren't going to stick.
Trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that
he's got the kind of senility where it doesn't crop up unless there's like 8 to 10 people talking simultaneously.
He's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens?
Is it my screen or does Trump look very dark?
Everything is going on here about Russia to make sure that I do not.
I think he's extra dark because he's probably extra pale from the COVID.
I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that
Biden's doing
trying
pretty
to
well
destabilize all of NATO.
But
I don't know why he doesn't do it. But
the Trump tricks just don't really work anymore.
Why isn't that being done?
That's really it.
Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the
This is not going to work.
Was the mayor of Moscow's wife.
It's not going to work.
You got $3.5 million.
The idea that he's going to win the election by claiming Joe Biden's corruption.
Now, about your thing last
people
night,
don't really believe it. They don't really care, honestly.
No, they don't. They only cared about Hillary because Hillary is kind of an inherently contemptible and unlikable figure in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, like Joe Biden has an underappreciated asset here, right? He's very likable for a large enough segment of the population, right?
Between all of
the other thing is that
like got the NATO countries,
everybody knows that politicians do the kind of thing that Joe Biden does. You know, everybody knows that politicians they get their kids lucrative signatures. You know, they know that that politicians get their kids jobs that they don't deserve. So who could possibly care in excess of like how much they care about Trump getting his kids and his son-in-law like very undeserved positions of international prominence.
A big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them.
I could see
but
that.
You were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money
we're
that
still
you were
on the
raking in.
emails, like strategy, like just can you just
when some of this was
imagine,
happening.
like
And it
4
should
years
never happen.
later, your
And I think
platform,
you
your
vote
platform is the
explanation.
same platform you ran in 2016.
You almost wish that like old people had the
was
same
essentially
digital
supposed to work
environment
with
that
you
we
and your
did. So
family.
it's like your AIM
But what he said was
conversations,
damning.
Joe. Your
And
AIM conversations.
Regardless of, I think you have to clean it up and
Like-
talk
like,
to the
just
American
think
people.
about it,
Maybe
like,
you can do it right now.
If Biden
Vice President
loses, if
Biden, you may
Biden
respond.
loses,
Thirty
Straight
seconds.
here.
And then I do want to follow
if this
up on
is
the
the
election
ultimate
security.
I have
proof.
not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this
In
president
your life? Oh,
paid
wow.
8 times tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your
This
hotels,
is the same debate that he had with Hillary, but in a deeper baritone.
China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax
Honestly,
return and
Biden is
stop
like
talking
more
about
on the
corruption?
ball than
President
I
Trump,
was
your
in
response.
that
First of all,
stream.
I called my accountant.
It's pretty good.
Under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful.
I want to release them. It's taken 4 years.
More important than that, we're saying $750. I asked them a week
There's
ago,
4 years of red tape.
What did I pay? Sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax.
Does anybody believe this? Like, who's watching this? Like, oh yeah, that sounds like the.
Did your account
Nobody
tell you
told
that?
me that.
Yeah, that's the thing is that
And it
Trump
wasn't written.
can't argue from a position of like
$750. I think is a
plausible
filing fee.
deniability
You just-
anymore. Like nobody
I
is watching
prepaid
this
millions and
like
millions of
totally
dollars in
buying
tax.
his explanation of
Number
his
one.
like
Number two, I don't make money
his
from China.
released
I do.
tax
I don't make money
information.
from Ukraine.
You know,
Yeah.
they either
I
don't
don't
care
make money
or
from
they care a
Russia.
lot.
You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not.
To the big man.
The big man. I think. So we have to give 10% to the big man.
How is
Joe,
this?
what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions
I have to
about all of this,
respond to
but I'm going to let you both
Oh my
respond very
God.
quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have a
soon as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when
You know,
you're going
in
to
Dan's-
You said this 4 years
Tea
ago.
Party got treated. Because I have a lot of
You
people
said
in
it's
there,
4
deep
years
down in the
ago.
IRS, they treat me horribly.
You know, it's
We made
like
a deal, it was all-
in Dan's old essays about the Iraq War or
I get
whatever.
treated very
Like if one
badly
of
by
the
the
far
IRS,
right
very
commentators
unfairly.
and one of the far left
We had a
commentators
deal
from
all
a
done.
different
As
blog
soon as we're
were arguing
completed
with
the
each
deal,
other.
I want to release it, but
Yeah.
I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your
It's,
taxes. I paid in
I-
advance.
it's
wanna
worse
ask
than
you
paying.
both
I paid
about
in
questions
advance.
regarding foreign entanglement and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point
talk
about
about
this
this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years?
See,
Show us.
he's on the ball. He's on the
Just
fucking
show
ball.
us.
Like
Stop playing around.
anybody that was
You've been
calling
saying
him
for 4 years you're going to
senile.
release your taxes.
No,
Nobody knows,
they've
Mr.
given
President.
him
What
the
they
good
do know
drugs before
is
the
you're
important
not
debates, you know?
paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on.
He does look and
on.
sound very old, though, you have to admit.
And I want to get
Yeah,
to
he does.
both of
Yeah.
you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt
Trump sounds
for
timeless.
3 years. It started before I even
But I mean,
got
he's not.
elected.
He's not clever
They spied
anymore.
in my campaign.
He's not
No,
saying
he's not.
anything
No
that's
president should
like
ever have to go through what I went
nothing's
through. Let me
memorable.
just
This is
say
just
this.
he's pretty
Mueller
boring, right?
And 18
He's so
Yeah,
fucking
no,
like-
the only funny
CIA
thing in the
just
previous
all-
debate was when he pulled the giant
$48
mask
million.
out of his suit coat.
They went through everything I
Yeah.
had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong.
But, like, the
48
aesthetic
million.
is so old
I
at
guarantee
this
you, if I
point,
spend
right?
$1 million on you,
Like
Joe,
when you're
I could find
focused on
plenty wrong.
like the
Because
surface
the kind
level,
of things that
like
you've done,
you'll
and the
get
kind of
so
monies that your
tired
family
of
has
this
taken.
aesthetic. Like
I
you
mean,
got to
your
come up with
brother made
something
money
new,
in
right?
Iraq.
Let me-
Yeah,
Millions of
well, it's not
dollars.
old in
Your
this
brother
in the
made
like
$20
chronological sense,
all
but it's
three
old in the
and they
like
say you get
fashion
something.
sense.
And
You
do
know,
live
it's
very
like
well. You have houses
it's
all over
like
the place.
trying
You
to
live
watch a
very
50
well.
Cent
All right,
video
gentlemen, let
in
me just
2020.
ask
You know,
questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian
Early
energy company
2000s
when you
was
were
the
vice
best
president.
hip-hop fashion,
In
though.
retrospect, was
Yes.
anything about those relationships
Yeah,
appropriate
there's
or
no
unethical?
comparison
Nothing was an
That's a golden
Here's
age.
what the deal.
of hip hop aesthetic.
Cool.
With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was.
I mean,
on board by
honestly,
later
I don't know why the
years,
Republicans keep dipping into the Hunter
somehow
Biden well,
I'd
because
done
Hunter
something wrong.
Biden is the
And
only
every
like
single
relatable
solitary
aspect
person
of
when
this
he was
entire election.
Yeah,
testifying under
and
oath
also
to work with
Biden's
me
like
said, I did
texts.
my
I mean,
job
they're
impeccably.
most people that
Carried
would
out
read
US
that they would
policy.
feel
Not one
empathy
single
for
solitary
Biden.
thing was out of
No,
line.
that's like something
Not a
that my
single
dad
thing.
would send
Number one.
if
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
addicted to
Two,
drugs.
the
You
guy who
know,
got
and that's the
trouble in
thing. Like
Ukraine was this
you know,
guy
this is the
trying to
weird
bribe
part. Like
the Ukrainian government
so,
to say something negative about me.
you know,
which
he's like
they
the
would
only
not
guy to be
do
nice to
and
Bernie
did not do,
Sanders.
because it never.
Everybody
ever,
says he's like
ever
the
happened.
nicest guy ever.
My son has
You know,
not
it's just
made money.
very weird how
in
you could,
terms
on the
of
one
this thing
hand,
about,
be
what are you
personally
talking
one
about?
way, and
China.
yet you know, your
I have not
actions
had
are
it. The only
responsible
guy
for
made money
unleashing
from
you know
China
any number of
is this
evils upon the
guy.
world, right?
He's
That's
the
just
only one.
I always find that a very strange kind of
President Trump,
disconnect, right?
let me
Like
ask my
Biden just
question to
seems
you.
like
But could I just one thing?
purely
His
personal
son
level, just very decent.
Didn't have a job for a long time.
No, I
He's
feel like
sadly no
Biden
longer
is like a good guy
so
with
we'll get
no
to that.
kind of
And
grounding
he
in
didn't
any
have a
kind
job.
of
As
like
soon as he became vice
competent
president,
moral
charisma, not
philosophy
the
or
best
like the
look,
right
not the best
information about like
reputation in the
what he
world.
needs
I
to
hear they paid him
know to make the right
183,000
decisions, you know?
a month. Listen to this.
I mean, he's
183,
always
and they gave him a
the
$3
weird
million
thing is that
upfront payment.
it's
All
weird
right.
to have a
And he had
candidate
no
that has
energy.
I'm going to
always
let the
been
Vice President
wrong
respond to that quickly, and then I
on
need to
every
get to a question
status
to
quo
you. Very
history.
No
You know what I
basis
mean?
for that. Everybody investigated
He's
that.
been
No
Well,
one
wrong
said
yeah,
and
anything.
he's never had
I
his
mean, I
role.
totally get,
Okay, President Trump, this is for
I
you.
have to
Since you took
say,
office,
your previous
never
live
divested
stream
from
was
your
kind of
business.
all over the place for a
Limited
title like
property
"Why I'm
fraud.
Not Voting for Joe Biden,"
President,
but
does
I get it. I get
how
it.
can voters know that you
I'm
don't have
personally
any
going to
foreign
vote for him
competition?
because
I
I
have
have
many
like
bank accounts, and they're all
personal
listed, and
familial
they're all over
interest
the
in
place.
seeing
I
the
mean, I
Muslim
was a
ban
businessman
overturned
doing
because I
business.
have a lot of
The
in-laws in
bank
Iran
account you're referring
specifically.
to, which
But like,
everybody
I
knows
could
about it,
totally
is
see
listed.
like not voting
Bank
for him
account
because he
was
is the
in
embodiment of like the Democrats not
2013.
being right
That's
on
what it was.
virtually
It was
any
open.
issue of the like the
It was
last
closed in
30
2015,
years.
I believe.
But
And then I
he is
decided, because I
likable
was
in a
going
way
to
that
do, I was
most
thinking about doing a
politicians
deal
are
with China,
not.
like
You
millions of
know,
other people.
like
I was
he
thinking about
is
it,
like
and I
your
decided
dad's
I'm
like
not going to do it.
friend.
Didn't like it.
You
I
know,
decided not
like
to do it.
he's
I
like
had an
the
account
old
open,
guy that you
and I
know
closed it.
that kind of,
Excuse me.
you know,
And
he's
then,
not
unlike
right on
him,
any
where he's
particular
vice
thing, but when the
president and he
team is
does
really
business,
demoralized, he
I
makes the
then
right
decided
speech.
to run for
Yeah.
president after that. That was before. So I closed it
And he's kind of
before
good
I
at that,
even
honestly.
ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money
President
every
Trump,
place
thank
You
you.
know,
We do need to
Trump's
move
case
on.
against
I do
Biden
want to
is a
ask
lot
you,
more convoluted than his
President
case
Biden,
against
about
Hillary.
China. Let's
Yeah.
talk about China
Yeah.
more broadly.
His brother
There
and
has,
his
of
son
course,
and his
President
other
Trump
brother,
said that they
like,
should pay
Yeah,
not
like
being
it
fully
fell flat
transparent
probably
in regards
for
to
that
the
reason. Like
coronavirus. If you were
Joe
president,
is like
would you make China
Teflon
pay?
fucking
And
Joe.
please be
Like
specific.
he's,
What would that look like?
like
What I'd
nothing
make
sticks
China
to this
do is
guy.
play by the international rules.
he's not
Not
even
like he is
Teflon.
to
He's like,
cause the deficit in
I don't
China
know.
to
He's
go
like
up,
something
not
from
down.
another dimension,
He
you
just
know?
he
Like
just
things aren't even capable of
absorbs.
sticking to him.
He just
We must
absorbs
ensure that in order
impact.
to
He
do business in
absorbs
China, you have to
substance.
give
He just
Yeah.
like
intellectual
sucks
property.
everything
You have
in,
to
and yet
partner in
stays
China
exactly the same
51%.
for
It would not do
50
that at
years.
all, number one.
No, I mean, it's
Number two, we're in a
incredible that in the
situation
year
where China
2020,
would
he
have to
was
play by the rules
accused, like,
internationally as well. When
you
I met
know,
with Xi
semi, but not really
when I
credibly
was
of
still vice
rape. And
president, he
he's just
said
out
we're
here
setting up
like,
air
you know,
identification
Donald Trump, his tax
in the South
returns
China
were a
Sea.
little bit fishy in the way that
Yeah.
he
I said,
put
we're going
them.
to fly through
Like
it.
in
We
a
just flew
Democrat
B-52 B-1 bombers
electorate in
through it. We're not going
2020,
to
the
pay
fact that
attention.
he
They
has
have
the
to
kind of
play by the rules.
accusations
And
against him
what's
that
he
he
do?
does and that
He
he's still
embraces
swinging
guys
pretty
like
strong is kind of impressive. I have to give that
the
to him.
thugs like in
Yeah.
North Korea
Yeah.
and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our
But
friends.
it's the same
all
faces.
of our
Look at Trump.
allies.
It's the same
We make
faces
up
from
we're
2016. That's
25%.
that's the classic like
of the world's
2016
economy.
gif. Look at him.
We need
He's
to
still
be
making that
having the rest
face.
of our friends.
He's still
Yeah,
doing
no,
it.
he had,
Okay.
China.
I have
no,
to
he
change
These are
has
the
not
rules. You play
innovated
by
his
them, or you're going to pay the
gifts.
price for not playing by them economically. That's the
That's
way I
Trump's
will run
main
it.
problem
and
is
that's
that
what we
like
did
it's the
with
same
upholding
gifts in
steel tariffs
2020
and
that
a
he
range
was
of other
making in
things when we were president
2016.
and vice president.
He
All
hasn't
right,
found
let's talk
new
about North
means.
Korea. Let's
You know, I have to
Yes.
respond to that.
okay, very quickly, and
This
then we're
man
going to move
walked
on
out
to
with
North
$1.5 billion
Korea.
from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two. Number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking
A
about
strong
your
email.
family wanting to make $10
A
million
very
a year.
strong
for
email.
introductions.
Yeah.
President Trump, on China
It's an
policy,
email
though,
that could
what
bench
specifically are you going to do?
450.
What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
Hillary
I
Clinton
just
was
gave
like,
$28
you know,
billion
she was a
to our
representative.
farmers.
She was a
Taxpayers'
match or
money.
something.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money.
Biden,
Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know the
doesn't have
taxpayers.
that
It's called
quality.
China. China
Not
paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them
Only
anything.
the great farmers.
Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel.
Make it into a fake burger video.
Okay, Vice President Biden, your response.
Like, that's going to make it into a video.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he's.
No, honestly, the fact that Biden is more of a blank slate than
He doesn't want
Hillary
to
is
talk
to
about
his
the
advantage.
substantive issues. Not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're
that old joke about like
when Biden does this
badly right
Yeah.
now.
Well,
like
there's that old
when
joke about
he's like, okay, fuck off Trump for a second. Let's just like listen to like
We have
this.
to wait another month.
He
or
does
so.
this like
Or are we
once
gonna be able to
every
pay
like
the mortgage?
15
Who's gonna tell her
minutes.
she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. And the middle class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
That is a
to talk about
statement.
North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
one
to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement.
Trump's
Let's get off this
hand
thing,
gestures
Andy,
are totally
around
like
the table, everything. Just a typical
unrelated to
politician.
the
when I say
debate.
that.
Let's talk
I'm
about
not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I
President
got
Trump.
elected.
Let's
Get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Why are we talking about China?
We're gonna
Why
talk
is that
about
like?
North Korea
Why
now.
is there a
President Trump has met
subsection
with
of
North
people
Korean
that feel like
leaders
China
3
is
times.
like the
You've talked
key
about your
issue
beautiful
in
letters
like
with him. You've
contemporary
touted the fact that
America?
there hasn't been
Well,
a
there's
war
a
or
concerted
long-range
effort to try to
missile
create like a
test, yet North
new
Korea
Cold
recently
War
rolled out
with China
its
right
ever
now.
intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House.
Barack
at the beginning,
Obama.
had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have
Handing off power. Here's what you gotta
Guess
know.
what?
It was
Would be a
supposed to be
nuclear-
15
and that's the
minutes. It
funniest
was
thing
about
about
half as long as
capability.
Alex
In the
Sherman's
meantime,
live
I have a
stream
very good
before this
relationship
debate.
with him. Different kind of a guy. He probably thinks the same thing about
15
me.
minutes.
We have a different kind of
Obama's
a
gonna explain the
relationship.
White House
We have
to
a
him.
very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead
Wait,
of
what
being
is
in a
he
war
talking
where
about?
millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be
Okay.
dead right now.
President Trump, that's 30
And I have a
seconds.
good
Thank you.
relationship.
Vice President Biden, to you. North
Well,
Korea.
honestly,
Oh
like,
my God! Oh my
The Obama
God! He
administration.
averted
Why
North
do you
Korea
think we would
and
be able
a
to
fucking
rein
Armageddon in
this
South
persistent
Korea.
threat right
Because
now?
I'd make it clear, which
Well,
would make
honestly,
it clear,
like-
If it wasn't for
deal,
Trump,
because here's the reason. I made
South
it
Korea
clear
would have been
as
bombed.
a spokesperson
he's
of
a,
the
he's
administration
a
when I went
little
to China.
right in
And
the
he said,
sense
why
that,
are you
like,
moving your missile
you know,
defense up so
having
close?
someone that
Why are
is
you
similar to
moving
Kim
more
Jong
forces?
Un
Why are
in
you
the
continuing
driver's seat in America probably does like
military maneuvers
de-escalate
with South
tension
Korea?
in a way
I
that
said,
no other
because
American leader
North Korea
would.
is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them.
It's just
We're going
such
to make
an
sure we can
incredible
control them and make sure
hypothetical,
they
you know what I
cannot
mean?
hurt us.
It's
And so if
such
you
an
want to do something
incredible,
about
like,
it, step up and
set
help.
of,
If
like,
not,
assumptions
it's going to
that
continue.
he's trying to, like,
What has he
imagine
done?
this.
He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug.
He's
and he talks about
legitimized
how
North
we're better
Korea.
off.
That
We
regime
have
has been
much
in
more
power
capable
for like
missiles,
60
able to
years.
reach U.S. territory
What does that mean?
much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the.
That's a precondition.
Nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American
Kristen,
families.
they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him.
Okay, gotta give him a chance to respond to that before we move on.
King Joe, do you want to be with Obama? No, I don't like him.
We're not in a war.
I don't like him.
like Obama.
You know, listen, having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have,
leaders
Does
of
anybody
our
know
country
how
we have a
funny
lot
is
of
a good thing.
we have a lot of questions to get
Yes,
to.
not
That's
Your
like
response.
saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe. The rest of
That's
Europe.
not
Come
an
on.
argument in
There's
favor
the
of
reason
Democrats,
we would not
dude.
meet with President Obama. Because President Obama said we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to
Like
legitimize
we
you.
as
We're gonna
Democrats had a
put
good
stronger and
relationship with
stronger
Hitler before
sanctions
he
on you.
invaded
That's
Czechoslovakia
why
is
he
not a
wouldn't
good
meet with
argument.
us.
All right,
And it
let's
didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk
He
about
left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump. Okay, we
They
do need to move
left
on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And in
need to
fact,
move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can
first
get to all
It's
of our
very
questions.
tidy
How
now.
is
It was
this?
a very dangerous period in my first 3 months
How-
before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a very they left
Honestly,
us
can you
a
believe this is
mess, and
happening?
Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues.
You
that's
know, it's
most important-
amazing. Like This is more like
Today
the
there was a
rules
key
that were
vote on a
supposed to
new
apply to the
Supreme Court
first
justice
debate, and
named
it's not
Barrett,
any
and
more
healthcare is at
substantive.
the center of her
Yeah,
confirmation
exactly,
fight.
exactly.
Over
Yeah,
20
the
million
rules are
Americans
fine,
get
but the
their health
Democrats
insurance
get what they
through the
wanted. Like
Affordable Care
everybody's a
Act.
fucking
It's
like
headed to the Supreme Court,
rule following
and your
prick.
administration,
Every-
Mr.
But
President, is
the result,
advocating
the
for them to
result is the same.
overturn it.
This is
Every-
no
If the
fucking
Supreme Court
different.
does
Everybody
overturn
gets
that
to
Just
law,
less
ramble
loud.
20
pointlessly
million
for
Americans
2
lose
minutes.
their health insurance almost overnight.
Like,
So what
and
would you
she's
do
just like
if those
earnestly
people
sitting
have their
there
health
asking
insurance taken
questions,
away? You have 2
knowing
minutes
that
to
it's
interrupt.
not going to be
First of all, I've
answered.
already done something that nobody thought was
So
possible.
healthcare, what's the answer?
Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual
kinda
mandate
right.
where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision, run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route. Made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are
coulda gone
down.
the other
Everything's
route.
down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What we'd like to do is a much better health care, much better.
This is the
Always
American
protect
policy
people with
debate.
pre-existing.
This
I'd
is
like
the
to
American
terminate
policy
Obamacare,
debate.
come up
It's
with a
amazing
I'm
great-
going to
because-
terminate Obamacare, come up with something
Democrats
better.
will do it because there'll
Well,
be
it's
tremendous
amazing because his points against
pressure
Obamacare are
on
not
them, and we
wrong,
might
but
even
you
have the
cannot
House by
argue
that
from the
time,
left
and I
of
think we're going to win
Obamacare.
the House. Okay,
So
we'll
it's just
see, but I think
completely
we're gonna win the House.
incoherent.
But come up with a better
They had
health care,
fucking 12
always
years. They've
protecting
been
people
talking
with
shit
pre-existing
about
conditions. And one
Obamacare
thing
for
very
12
important,
years.
we have
They get
180
into power,
million
they
people out
fucking
there
get
that
everything.
have
They get
great
Congress, they get the
private
presidency.
healthcare.
They can't
Far more
overturn
than we're talking
Obamacare.
about with Obamacare.
And they had
Well,
12
they
fucking
get into-
years. And
is
he's
going to terminate
still,
all of those
he
policies.
still can't talk
These are
about a
people
plan.
that
He talks
love
about
their
like,
health
I'm
care.
going to make something
People
better.
that have been
He doesn't even
successful,
have a
middle-income
plan.
people,
Like 12
been
fucking years.
successful.
There's no...
They have 180
Like, the only
They get
thing
into
you do is
power
like...
and they're
180
They get into
million
power and they're
families.
completely undone by a
Under what
brain
he wants to do,
cancer-ridden
which will
John McCain
basically
going,
be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to
Like-
terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care.
Trump,
And
what are
we're
you
gonna do
talking
even
about?
better.
He's not proposing Medicare for
Okay.
all, dude.
Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you.
I
Your
wish he
healthcare
was.
plan calls for building
Fuck
on Obamacare.
everybody's
My question
private
is,
health
what is your
care,
plan?
you know?
If the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I would keep private health
What
insurance.
I'm going to do is
for,
pass
plastic
Obamacare with a
surgery.
public option.
Yes,
Become
for
Biden
plastic
care.
surgery,
Public
it's
option,
shit like
acceptable.
that.
Option that says that
No,
if you,
private
in fact,
insurance
do
for
not
like
have the
totally
wherewithal
elective
to
procedures is
qualify for
fine.
Medicaid,
Yeah.
But
and
for
you do not
everything
have the
else, like
wherewithal,
we should all
then
clearly
you're
be paying into the
Medicaid
same pool.
automatically. People can choose.
Well, I
It's
kind
not
of
clever.
had
It's not cute.
Socialist plan.
I
No.
almost had sympathy for
President,
Melania
I think
until
healthcare
that
is not a
audio came
privilege,
out of
it's a
her
right.
recently where she was
Everyone
like,
should have the
you know,
right to
fuck
have
these
affordable
people,
health care.
you know, fuck
And I
everybody
am very
that's not
proud of
me,
my plan. It's gotten
basically.
endorsed by
I mean, she's
all
been
the
saying
major
that
labor
forever. Like,
unions, as well
there's like
as well
clips
as
of
a
her
whole
back in
range
like
of other people who, in fact,
2014
are
on like The
concerned in
View or
medical
some
field.
shit,
This is
talking
something that's gonna
about
save people's
Obama should
lives.
release his
And this
birth
is going to give some people an
certificate.
opportunity.
Why don't you want
an
him to release
opportunity
the
to have
birth
health care for
certificate?
their
Like,
children.
that's what she
isn't
was
that
doing in
Home and worried
2014.
and
Come on.
rolling around and
Isn't
She's
that
on.
amazing?
She's on the
God's name, you're
fucking
gonna do
like
what you can
scam.
Isn't
because
that
you've lost
amazing
your
that like
home insurance,
Trump's
your
main
health
political
insurance.
contribution prior to
We have to
2016
provide health
was
insurance.
being the biggest booster of the
Affordable.
Barack
That's
Obama birther
President Trump,
conspiracy,
your
and we don't even
response.
talk about that
47
anymore.
Yeah.
He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie
is
Sanders wants
actually,
it. The
I think,
Democrats want it. You're going to
the
have
second like
socialized
most
medicine,
liberal
just like you
senator
went
in
with
the
fracking.
Senate, right? That
We're
is
not going to have fracking. We're going to stop
Well,
fracking.
that's
We're going to
true.
stop fracking. Then he
That's a
goes
little
to Pennsylvania.
questionable
after he
in
got the
that most
nomination, where he was very
liberal
lucky to get it.
can
And he goes
refer
to
it's only the
Pennsylvania,
last 8 years, so that's
and
the
he
thing.
says, "Oh, we can
Well,
have
it's
fracking."
also referring to like
And you never
most
asked that
liberal
question.
is
And
most
by the way,
voting
you
in
know, I
line with
respect very
Democratic
much.
Party
Exactly, yeah.
orthodoxy.
By the way,
But somebody should ask the question.
you can ask
He goes for a year. There will be
We
no
have
fracking.
we do have a number of.
But that's the thing. Every 4 years, every platform is by definition the most progressive ever.
It's the same thing with
So
socialized
when Kamala
medicine.
Harris went into like
Vice President, your
office, like
response, please.
My
in
response
California,
is
like
people
you're gonna
deserve
fucking have to like
affordable health care.
vote along
Period.
party lines.
Period.
for-
Well,
Period.
it's also
And
very
the Biden
easy to
care
have the most
proposal
liberal
will act-
platform when you
provide for
don't
that
have any
affordable
obligation to
care.
actually
Lower
enact it
premiums.
in
What
any
will
real
it do? It's
sense.
going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices
he's
drop
actually talking about like
significantly.
real
He keeps
numbers.
talking about
And
it. He hasn't done
and
a
this is
thing
correct.
for
The issue is that they're
anybody
just
on
not going to
healthcare.
mean
Not a thing.
anything.
Kristen, when he
These
says-
numbers are not
And
going
I
to
wanna
mean
talk
anything.
about
When he
what's
says
happening
public
with
Ultimately, they will
capital
not
he's talking
plug up the
about
holes.
socialized medicine.
They will
And
not
when he-
stop the
and healthcare.
acceleration.
When he
like
Well,
talks
Joe
about
I
Biden
just
public
don't see
option,
how
he's
Joe
talking about
Biden
destroying
is going to
Medicare.
get a public
Oh,
option
just
when
like
Barack
destroying
Obama
your
could
Social
not.
Security,
You know,
and this whole country
Yeah.
will come down. You
like
know,
Joe
Bernie
Biden
Sanders
is
tried it.
in many
in his
ways
state.
significantly less
Like
charismatic
it's
and
you know like
galvanizing
it's
of
the
a figure than
2008
Barack
platform,
Obama.
you know.
Let's let Vice President
It's the
Biden
2008
respond. Vice
platform.
President
That's
Biden, your
crazy.
response.
Yeah, we're gonna do what we said we would do 12 years ago.
Yeah, it's the 2008 platform.
Because I disagreed with
have
them.
people actually
Joe
consider
Biden
that?
He's running against.
He's
And
running
the
on the
idea
2008
that we're in a
healthcare
situation
platform.
that they're going to destroy Medicare.
No, I mean,
this
the Tea
is the
Party
guy
is truly
that the actual
like
rate Medicare
a
said,
stunning
in fact,
achievement
at
of
Social
like
Security.
regressivism, you know, of like reaction.
To withhold
Because
tax
like
on Social
stuff
Security.
that was
Social
like
Security
fairly mainstream 12 years ago is now radical.
2023.
Yeah.
With no way to make up for it.
Yeah.
This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of.
seconds.
He
Come
tried
on,
to
man.
hurt
That's
Social
true.
Security
Another
years
question.
ago.
But it's
Years
true.
ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt
Or the
Social
grand
Security
bargain, right?
years
That
ago.
was
All
supposed
right,
to be.
let's move on.
But this
I'm
is
going
the
to
No,
move on.
he's right.
Mr. President, I have to move on to
That's
this.
the thing is that like
else
Trump
we're not
can
gonna have to
accurately
talk about it.
criticize
If
Biden
he's
about a lot of
elected,
things,
stock market
except
will
for the
crash.
fact that
Okay,
Trump
let's
himself
move
is
on
to
to
the
the
right
next
of
question.
Biden.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
The idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more. $700 billion more, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on.
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't
They're
come from
both
Scranton.
correct.
That's
I don't
like
know where
one
to
of-
fall.
He lived there for a short
We're
period of
gonna-
time.
okay.
He's trying
We're
to be
gonna
a
move on to
wonk
the next
about
question.
where he
People
was
of
born.
Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next
He's-
question.
he's-
gentlemen.
he's-
As of
he's
tonight,
trying to
more
birth
than 12
certificate
million
Biden here.
people
You
are
weren't
out of
born in
work.
Scranton.
And as of tonight, 8 million
Well,
more Americans
it's
have
amazing
fallen
because
into
they're
poverty,
both correct,
and more
but they're both
families
arguing
You
from the
weren't
wrong
born in
premises.
Most hit hardest are women and people of color.
They're
They
both
see
right,
Washington
but they're both
fighting
arguing
over
from
a
like
relief bill.
absurd
Mr. President, why
premises,
haven't
you
we been
know?
able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds. Here.
Like
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't
Biden
want to
is
approve
correct
it. I
that
do.
Trump
You're the
is
president.
overly
I do, but I still
reliant
have to
on the
get it.
stock
Unfortunately,
market
that's
as a
one of the
measure of
reasons I
his
think we're going to
success.
take over the House.
But
because
Trump is correct
Nancy
that like
Pelosi doesn't
Biden
want
has
to
not
approve
like
anything
done
because she'd
anything
love to have
to
some
create
victories
success outside of that
on a date
particular
called November
framework.
3rd.
So like
Nancy
what
Pelosi
is anybody
does not want to
expecting of
approve it.
him?
We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice President
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so they didn't have to fire.
I mean, as a nurse,
firefighters,
I want this
teachers,
act to
first
pass
responders,
personally.
so they can keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with
bill
these
that was
guys?
passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally.
So boring.
We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for
The first
badly
debate
run
was
Democrat
arguable
cities.
because Trump was
All right,
such
I
a
wanna-
bully that might have
I'm running as a proud Democrat.
that might have
An
moved the
American
needle,
president.
but he just
I don't
looks like
see
weak and
red states in
tired in this debate.
What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds
They
themselves
both
in
just look
trouble.
so
They're going
fucking
to start
old, though.
laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first
Like,
responders.
everybody just wants the
because
shit to be
teachers,
over.
because they
I
have
don't wanna
balance
hear
their
about
budget,
shit
and the
for the next
founders were
4
smart.
years.
They allowed the federal government
I don't
to
want to hear
spend the
shit for the
complement
next 4
of the
years.
United
That's
States
Biden's
of
whole
America.
appeal,
Talk
honestly,
about
is
the
like
minimum wage,
you can
gentlemen.
go
Mr. Vice
back to
President,
not paying
we
that
are
much of
talking a lot
attention.
about struggling small businesses
Yes.
and business owners these days.
Oh my God.
Do you think this
And
is
that's
the right
bad.
time to
Think how
ask
much
That's
power
legit.
presidents have
for
over like
$15
basic
federal
attention.
minimum
I
wage?
do, because I think one of the things
Fuck.
we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. It's not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
Excuse me,
immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to
said
get
we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
we have
recently-
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum
it.
wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
What I
$15 an
really
hour. Is
like,
that still the case?
and I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to
I
a
would
level that's going
consider
to
it
put
to
all
an
these
extent.
businesses out of business. It'd be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would
Okay,
be
President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick
no
response,
one
Vice
should-
President
Remember,
Biden.
$22 an hour
One job.
is minimum wage set to
Below
inflation
poverty.
since minimum wage
People are
is
making
passed.
$6, $7,
Yeah,
$8
I
an
mean,
hour. These first
You can't
responders
exactly
are all
set that
as
because
they
the
come down
the shape of the economy
They've
is so
allowed us to
different.
make
But
it.
yeah,
What's
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
They
But
deserve
still,
a minimum
just
wage
conceptually
of
knowing
$15.
how far
Anything
people
below
need to
that puts you
go
below
from
the
where they are
poverty
right
level.
now,
And there
like,
is
Yeah.
no
keep that in
evidence
mind,
that when
right?
you raise the
It needs
minimum
to be
wage,
$22
businesses go out
to
of
at least
business.
reach
That
parity
is
with
simply
minimum
not
wage.
true.
And
We're going
that's
to talk about
not
immigration.
considering
We're going to
all
talk
the
about
other shit,
immigration now,
right? There's so
gentlemen.
much other shit.
And we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more
How
than
did he
500
reverse it,
children.
honestly?
So how do we reunite it?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had.
there's just so much
We're over
pushback,
400
like-
miles of brand new wall. You see the
I'm not sure if
numbers,
I'd
and we
call it
let people
reverse,
in,
but-
but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
merit.
how will you
But
reunite
let me
these
just tell
kids
you,
with their
Let
families,
me just tell you,
Mr.
they
President?
built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages. And
They
then
built
had
them,
a
I just
picture
used
in a
them.
certain newspaper.
Well, he's right.
And it was a
Like
picture of these
Biden
No,
was
but
part of the administration.
Look at
but like the fact that that is his like
And then it was
selling
determined
card,
they were
like
built
his
in
selling point.
2014.
He
That was
built
him.
them. I just
Do you
used
have
them,
a
so
plan
don't
to
blame
reunite
me.
the kids?
Well,
Yes, we're working on it
absolutely. I
very-
mean,
we're
he should not be
trying
making
very
that
quick.
argument
But a lot
like
of these kids come out
his
without the parents. They come over
supporters
through
should be making that
cartels and
argument.
through coyotes and through
Yeah.
gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation.
Why did he
response
mention
and then another
coyote
question.
more than once in that response?
With parents.
It plays well.
Separated them at the border to
Coyotes.
make it a disincentive to
The
come
coyote
together.
is the one that always loses in the
They
Looney
really
Tunes cartoons. You don't want to mention that, dude.
Guess what? They cannot. It's not coyotes.
And now
Didn't
he's
bring
talking
them
about
over.
coyotes.
Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents, and it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask
Not
you a
really.
follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
did it. We changed.
did not.
They built the
separate
cages.
They.
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're
talk
talking
about what
about.
we're talking
What happened? Parents were ripped. Their kids were
Let's
ripped
talk
from their
about what
arms
we're talking
and separated.
Yeah.
Now they cannot find over 500 of sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. The fact is,
Well,
I've made it
you
very
missed
clear.
me saying that
Within
Barack
100
Obama
days,
was
I'm
a
gonna
secret
set the rest of
Zoroastrian.
pathway to citizenship for over
Well, there's
11 million undocumented people.
People
and
that
all of
subscribe, though,
those
to like
so-called
Obama,
dreamers, those DACA
they have
kids,
this, like,
they're going to be
Manichaean
immediately certified again to
philosophy
be able
about
to
the world.
stay
You know what
in
I
this
mean?
country.
They
They're put on a
believe that
path
the
to
Democrats are
citizenship.
going to be the
The
bulwark
idea
against
that
like
they
this
are
like
being sent
encroachment
home by
of,
this guy and they
of
wanna do
capital
that
and destruction
is they're
and
going to
just
a
like
country they've never seen.
sucking
Well,
up of
yeah,
everything
I
to,
can
to
imagine
the black
you're
hole.
5
They
years
have that
old, parents are
Manichaean
taking you across
like Zoroastrian like
Rio
fucking
Grande
understanding
River, and it's
reading of
illegal.
like human
say, "Oh, no, Mom,
behavior,
leave me
right?
here.
And,
I'm not
and
gonna go."
psychology.
They've
Well,
been
yeah,
here.
the
They were
Democrat
model
strategy
citizens. Over
makes great sense
20,000
if
of
you
them
assume
first
the Republicans
responders
never
out there
being in
taking care of
power at
people
any
during this
level of
crisis.
government ever again.
We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do.
It's true.
And I've changed
did.
without
Fucking
having
true.
a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, response.
Catch and
That's so
release. You know what he's
stupid
talking
when you
about there?
use the cages,
In
dude.
fact, you had a family
Yeah.
came across and they were arrested. They, in fact, were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's
And
never
that's the
happened
thing. These
before
kinds
in
of
America.
norms, right?
That's never happened before in
objectively, they
America.
are.
You come to the
It
United
is bad,
States
right?
and you make your
we
case
had a sort of
that I
internationalist
seek
world.
asylum based on
With
the following,
Trump, you know,
on
you
the following premise,
eliminate
why I deserve it
certain,
under
I guess, like
American law.
standards of
They're sitting in
human
squalor on the
rights,
other
like
side
what
of the
America
river.
does. Not to say that America was
President
making a
Trump,
dent
your
in any of
response,
this
30
before, but
seconds, and then we'll
It
move
just
on.
shows
you know,
that he has no
that is not-
understanding of immigration
that is
of the
the
laws.
decline that
Catch and release
that
is a disaster.
energizes people
murderer would
and makes
come
them feel
in,
disgusted,
a
right? Like
rapist would come
why
in,
would you do
a
that,
very
right?
bad person would come in.
Well,
we would
it's
take
it's
their
very
name.
odd.
We have
That's
to release
sensitive for the
them
liberal
to
media,
our
right? Like
country.
liberal
And
media
they say
elites,
they come back.
their empathy would
Less
say
than
this is
1%
not
of the
something that
people
you do,
come back.
right?
We have to send
Yeah, well,
ICE
America,
out
I think,
and
is
Border
not
Patrol
quite
out
at
to
the
find
point
them.
that
They
Trump
come back
advisors
in 2
want it to be
years,
at,
3
you know,
years. We're gonna
in
give you
terms
a
of
court
like
case. You'd be very nice. We're
imprisoning
gonna give you a court case.
asylum
When you
seekers and
say they come
refugees and
back,
things like
they
that.
don't come back, Joe. They never come back.
Uh-huh.
Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Let's give President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You don't
next
know the law,
section.
Joe.
President Biden, your response.
Oh my God.
Well,
Check
check it
it.
out.
They don't come back. Check it out.
All right, let's move on.
We don't have to worry about it.
What the
They
fuck?
terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it.
This
Let's
is
move
the
on to the
debate
next
for
section.
who's going to be the most powerful human being on the planet. Let's have
All
that
right,
discussion.
let's talk
This
about
is-
our next
This
section,
is the
which
discussion that
race in
emerges.
America. And I want to talk about the way
Oh my
Black and
God.
brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is
Oh
something
yes, let's
called
talk
the
about how
talk.
Americans
It
experience
happens
race in
regardless
this
of class
country.
and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. What I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, yes, sir, no, sir. Hands
He's
on
right.
top of the
I don't
wheel,
like wearing hoodies because it makes me
are,
fucking
in
nervous
fact,
about the
victim,
cops,
whether
and
you're
I'm white.
a person making
I don't wear
$300,000
hoodies.
child of
If I was
$300,000 a year
I'd
person,
never be
or
wearing a
someone who's
fucking hoodie.
Well, he's
on
right, but
food
he's
stamps.
combining like
Fact
4
of
or
the
5
matter
different tropes per
is
sentence.
institutional racism
Yeah.
in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion,
What's he, 78?
not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things,
dude.
just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free
Like
from
they want
violence.
the new shit. Like
President Trump, same question
you know,
to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families.
like,
Do you
if
understand
you're like in the
why
meme
these
world,
parents
like you
fear
want
for
the
their
new
children?
shit,
Yes,
and you
I
haven't
do.
gotten it from Trump.
And again,
Trump
he's
has
been in
dominated
government
memes
47
in
years. He never did a
2016.
thing except in 1994,
It's just garbage.
when he did such harm to the
Like,
black
what are you going to point to?
community.
We got nothing.
And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe.
Black
did he do
people,
it?
according
I
to
don't even
polls,
think
are
they tried
voting
because
at
they had
higher
no
rates for
chance of
Trump this
doing
time
it.
around.
They might have wanted
people
to
need
do
to
it, but if you had to see the
understand
arms
that.
I had to twist to
I
get
mean,
that
not
done.
that much higher.
Pretty
Like,
big
what
difference.
went into that?
Everybody knows it, including some very liberal
not that
people
much higher.
cried in my office. They cried in the
Yeah,
Oval
it's
Office.
only a
2
few
weeks later, they're out
percentage
saying,
points. This
"Gee,
is
we
true.
have to defeat him."
But the fact
Criminal
that it
justice
could be
reform,
at all higher
prison
after
reform,
like
opportunity
Charlottesville,
zones with Tim
after
Scott, a great senator
coronavirus
from
like decimating
South Carolina.
non-white
he came
communities.
in with this incredible idea for
like
opportunity zones.
Still,
it's one of the
people
most
don't care
successful
enough,
programs.
and they're
People don't
swayed
talk
by the
about it.
aesthetics.
Tremendous
for some reason,
investment
right?
is being made. Biggest
Whatever's happening on the other
Black
side,
and
like
Hispanic
clearly,
communities,
it's not a
and
winning
then
strategy, right? Like
Black
people need to
colleges
understand
and
that, right?
universities.
It might win
After
4
3
now,
years of
but
coming to
you
the
need
office,
to
I love some
start
of those
offering
guys. They were
something
great.
else.
They
Like
came
you're
into the
losing the
office,
black vote to
and they
fucking
said,
Trump
I said, what are you
in
doing? After
2020
3 years,
during
I said, why do you keep
coronavirus.
coming back?
Well, I
Because
mean,
we
they're
have no
losing
funding.
it, but they're losing it at a slow enough rate
Because
that it's
President
probably
Obama
not worth.
would never give them long-term
It's not
funding.
worth it to
and I did.
discuss this just yet.
10-year long-term funding.
Right?
and
Black
I gave
people
them
aren't,
more
like,
money
exiting
than
Democratic
they asked
Party
for.
anymore.
Because they said, I
maybe
think
maybe
that-
8 to 12
the
years
only
from
bad
now,
part
it might
about this
be.
is I may never see
Yeah.
you again
It might have
because
reached a
I
fever
can't friendly
pitch.
with them. And they like me and I like
Yeah.
them. But I saved
Assuming we don't have a fracture in
colleges and
2024, I
universities.
think there's
and we're going to talk
something
about both of your records, but
happening,
your
like,
response to that, Vice
My
President.
sometime
response
in
to
this
that is
decade.
I never, ever
Well,
said.
I mean, I think if anything's going to happen, it's probably going to be like
Fact of
fucking
the matter is, in
Yugoslavia level,
2000,
you know. But
after the crime bill had been
I guess we'll see.
in the law for a while. This is a
maybe
guy
not,
who
maybe
said,
not to that degree,
"Oh,
but in the
crime
sense
bill,
that
there's
like
not enough people
I
in
think
jail.
you might see a lot
There's
more
not enough
autonomy of like the
And go
different
on my
regions
website,
of
get
the
the
United
vote,
States
get-
increasing over the
not
next
enough.
decade or so.
He talked
Yeah.
about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about.
I'd be
is the
okay
law
being
that,
like this
in
at
fact,
78. You know what I mean?
initiated by Barack Obama.
I'm definitely not
And
going to be
secondly,
writing books
we're in
or
a
anything at
situation here
78.
where The federal
right.
prison system
Yeah. Like
is used
I
by
promise everybody, I will
38,000
not be
people
writing books
under
in
our
78. Don't
administration.
write books as a
And one of these
78-year-old.
things we should be doing, there should be
Well, I think it depends on what kind of
minimum
drugs you're
mandatories in the
getting
law.
injected
That's why I'm
directly into the
offering
Who knows
shaft
what
of
it's
your
going to be like?
penis.
Actually, I
change
take
their
that back. Who
state
knows what
laws
shit's
to
going to be
eliminate
like
minimum
when we're
mandatories
78.
and set up drug courts. No one should be going to
Maybe,
jail
maybe
because they have a
I'll
drug
be live
problem.
streaming.
They should be going to
They're going to give you the
rehabilitation.
cyber
not to jail.
cocaine by the time you're
Fundamentally
78.
change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago? Even less than that. Why didn't you?
I
Look,
am
you were
not-
vice president.
Donald,
Keep
come
talking
on.
about
You gotta find a new line.
We're going to do this. You were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama.
No, you didn't.
Because you did a poor job.
You did
If
run
I
because
thought
of
you did a good
Barack, but
job,
you didn't
I
run
would
because of
never run.
Joe.
I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other
One
countries,
good
Iraq,
thing
if
about all
is
this
true,
is,
then
you
he's
know,
a corrupt politician.
there has
So
been
don't
enough
give me the stuff
people that
about
have
how you're
gotten
this
wealthy
innocent baby.
as a kind of
No,
like
they're calling you a corrupt
baseline
politician.
No
that-
way.
President
The
Trump,
you know,
I want to
laptop
stay on
from
the
this
issue of race.
of
We're talking
character
about
like
the issue.
resonates with them. You know what I mean?
President
Like
Trump, we're
Nobody-
talking
that
about race right
liberal
now, and I
empathy
do want to
is, like,
stay on the
intact.
issue
Like,
of race.
that means
President Trump,
enough
you've
people are
just
respond to
doing
that,
well.
because look,
that
there are 50
this is how they're
former
gonna vote.
national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian
50
plan.
years from now, I think
They
the
have
country's
said
going to
that
be in a
this
much better place
has
than it
all
is
the
now.
5 former
I mean, I
heads
hope
of the
so.
CIA.
You know, it really
both parties
depends.
simply saying a bunch of
You know,
garbage.
it's good that
Nobody
more people
thinks
are in a
except
position where they can
his and his
consider
good
the
friend
character of the
Giuliani.
politicians.
You
But
mean the
it's also
laptop
bad
now
in the
another
sense that it allows
Russia
people to
hoax?
consider
Hey,
bullshit
that's exactly
over
what-
like
Is this
actual
where you're
tangible
exactly
like,
what-
effects.
This is where he's going.
Yeah.
The
All
right.
laptop is Russia,
Yeah.
Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black
Boy, oh
Lives Matter
boy.
movement
Can't
as a
believe
symbol
that one.
of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power.
He's such
to
a like
millions
he's
of
such a
your
like a little
supporters.
bitchy
You've
like
said that
you know.
black
There's
professional
something really
athletes
bitchy about him. You know.
exercising their First Amendment rights should
No,
be fired.
I mean, he
What do you
spent
say
most
to
of his
Americans
life
who say
like
that kind of language from the
sharing
president
bitter
is
New York
contributing to
New York
climate
Post
of
magazine
racist
covers. You know,
The first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. That was my first.
I mean, I agree.
Black Lives Matter was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done.
I don't
prison
know.
reform.
I don't know what to say.
Colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single.
Because he calls himself Abraham Lincoln, you know.
Every single
that wasn't
one.
that
I
wasn't
know,
started
I
off his
know,
campaign
but that's
coming
a
down the
weird
escalator saying
frame
he's
for an
rid of
insult
those
from
Mexican
Joe.
rapists. He
No, like
banned
Abraham
Muslims
Lincoln here. I
because
feel
of
like,
Muslims.
like the amount of
He's moved
Republicans
around,
have compared
made
Trump to
everything
like
worse across the
Lincoln.
board. He
Well,
says
yeah, that is
about the
that
poor
is very
boy.
funny. Wow.
Last time we were on stage here, he said, I told him to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy has a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give
That's
you 10
good.
seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying-
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, you have
It's
done
good that he's
nothing
just like
other than the
repeating
crime
that. Like
bill,
it just makes him
which
look
put
bad.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it
Tens
makes
of
it- yeah,
thousands.
it
It's
makes
just like
him-
any normal
black
person that hears
men,
that, they're like, "What the fuck are
mostly
you talking
in
about?"
jail.
Abraham
All right, let me-
Lincoln.
You know
let me
what?
a- let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if
Biden
you
a
look at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change it since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think maybe the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But
Okay,
why
so-
didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I
Why
become
aren't you
president.
getting done?
You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
didn't get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
gonna
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. You put tens
Because-
of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President
Because
Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well,
Okay.
you got to talk them into it, Joe.
All
Sometimes
right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already
time, so we
didn't.
got to get on to
Okay.
climate change. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want
love
is
the
the
environment.
cleanest crystal
The
clear
idea
water,
that Trump
the
loves
cleanest-
anything, especially the
Best
environment,
lowest
is
number in
ridiculous.
Yeah,
carbon
something as
emissions
useless,
is a
right,
big
as
standard that I
expendable.
notice Obama
Yeah.
goes with all the time. Joe, I
Like,
haven't heard
imagine
Joe use the
Trump
term
on a
much.
hike.
Who knows what it represents?
Yeah,
but I have
what the
heard
fuck?
Obama use it. We have the best
What the
carbon
fuck? You would
emission
never.
numbers that we've had
He's
in
like, why the
35
fuck would I be
years
doing this?
under this administration. We are working so well within this.
Imagine him
Here's what we
camping
can
for
do.
3 days.
Look at China.
Oh,
How
God.
filthy it is.
And I don't want to
Russia.
camp either, but
Look at India.
I
It's
can't
filthy.
imagine it
The
within
air
this
is
difference.
filthy.
It would
The
be like that
Paris
episode of
Accord, I
Hey
took-
Arnold
yeah,
where
because
Helga
we're
and
gonna
her
have to
dad are
spend
camping and they have
trillions of
nothing but
dollars
like
And we were treated
steaks
very unfairly.
cooked on
When they put us in there, they
and
were
eggs,
great
steaks and
disservice.
eggs.
They will take away our businesses. I will not
Hey Arnold
sacrifice
is really fucking
tens of
underrated.
millions of jobs.
Yeah, it's very good.
thousands and
It's
thousands
probably the
of
best
companies
90s cartoon.
because of the
It's up
Paris
there.
Accord. It was
Yeah.
so
Up there.
unfair.
I mean, Rocko's
China
Modern
doesn't
Life,
kick in
Hey
until
Arnold, Ren and
2030.
Stimpy.
Russia goes back to a low
What else is
standard,
there?
and we kicked in right away.
I don't know. Those are probably it.
It would have destroyed our business.
I
So,
think
you
Angry
ready?
Beavers
We
had some
have
pretty
done an
interesting
incredible
stuff,
job
but it never
environmentally.
really went anywhere. Oh,
The cleanest air, the
Courage
cleanest
the
water,
Cowardly
and the best
Dog.
carbon
Courage the
pretty
Cowardly
good.
Dog is
that we've
wonderful.
seen.
Yeah, that's good.
Vice
You
President
remember
Biden.
haven't
Eustace
destroyed our
Bag?
industry.
Eustace, you're useless.
President
Like they
Biden,
come
2
back
minutes to
from
you,
their
uninterrupted.
vacation, and
Yeah.
he was like,
Climate
and
change,
Grandpa was like,
warming,
"What a crummy
global
end
warming
to a
is an
crummy
existential threat
vacation."
to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world, we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point
Well,
of
Joe, no
return
matter what
within
happens,
the
you don't
next
have much
10
time.
years. Former years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit the limit of emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, your
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan. That his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look,
people are not negative about AOC. Like, does he understand that? People like AOC.
If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years,
she's a good lightning rod for
stream.
conservatives, though.
I mean, but look, like 2 days ago, she started her Twitch channel, I think, and she got like 650,000 subscribers. The biggest like political guy in Twitch only has 600,000.
This wasn't
crazy.
done by
Yeah, but I mean, a good point that I saw made is that the Republicans dedicated more time to AOC in their convention than the Democrats did in theirs.
$100 billion. They want to knock down buildings.
Yeah, but that's simply to energize that part of the base, right? Like,
let me have the
they're hoping maybe money's going to make a difference, right? But it might energize like a subsection of America, but most people find her attractive, you know?
I don't know where he comes up
No,
with
I
these
think
numbers.
most people are neutral to like slightly positive to her, but I think she would be in a national context. I think she would be easily pilloried in a way that Joe Biden is not.
Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45, $50 an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump, please respond, and then I have some follow-up.
We are energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive. It kills all the birds. It's very a lot of problems. And they have to make
This is the fucking policy
and the fumes
debate.
coming up.
My
If you're a
God.
believer in carbon
Bing,
emissions,
bing, bing,
the
ding,
fumes
ding.
coming up to make
That was Trump
is more than
arguing
anything
about,
that we're talking
windmills,
about with
which that
natural
kills the
gas.
birds.
Which is
Bing,
one of the
bing,
things.
bing,
Find me a
bing.
scientist
Solar.
said that.
I love solar. Solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
All right, let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
It came to him at the end. What about fracking?
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other
It's too bad.
industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas.
From what I've read, actually, that's from what I've read,
transition
there are like ways where it can be captured
He was
without
against fracking. He
consequences,
said
but
it. I will
it
show
requires
that
like
tomorrow.
so much regulation that
I am against fracking.
neither party is
until he
willing
got the nomination,
to
went to
vote, right?
Pennsylvania.
Like,
then he said,
Also, what about the
Still
emissions
do
from
it,
the
though.
actual? What about the emissions from the actual
Fracking on federal
burning
land,
of the
I said.
oil
No
itself?
fracking, no oil on federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to
groundwater
live near
pollution
oil
seems a
refineries
little hard to
chemical
work
plants.
around.
In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick.
There's
Your
theoretically ways to
administration
do
has
that,
rolled
but
back regulations on
nobody is
these
willing
kinds of
to
facilities. Why should these families
that
give you
cost,
another
you know what
4
I mean?
years in office?
Well, yeah,
The
I mean,
families that we're
theoretically
talking
is
about
nice,
are
but like, what are the actual momentums of capitalism right
You look
now,
at-
and what do they
Well, yeah,
favor?
I mean, yeah, in that,
black for
point of
Asian,
view, like it's not
9 times
tenable for
greater
that
the
reason.
percentage gain
In the same way
than
that
it was under
in
in 3
Biden is in the middle
years
of a
that it was
performative
under
contradiction. Like
8 years.
he wants these climate
of
plans. And I
the
mean, it's
two of
it's actually a
them,
good
to
plan.
put
Like
it
if every
nicely.
country were to follow this plan,
9
it would work.
times more.
But
Now,
he's also staffing,
somebody
his
I have not heard the numbers or the
team with
statistics
lobbyists,
that
right?
you're
Like
saying,
it's just
but
not.
they're making a tremendous amount of money.
That's just going to slow
economically.
it down,
we saved
right?
It. And I
Well,
saved it again a
that's the
number
thing
of
with
months ago
Biden
when
is like
oil was
not
crashing
everything
because
he
of the
proposes
pandemic.
is
We
bad, but
saved it.
everybody
We
that
got-
he
say what you want
proposes
about
to
relationships.
do the
We
thing
got
is
Saudi
that he
Arabia,
proposes are bad.
Mexico, and
Yeah,
Russia
exactly.
to cut back way back. We saved our
And I
oil
mean,
industry,
it's
and
such
now
a
it's
cliche.
very vibrant.
Every
And
platform
everybody has very
is more
inexpensive
progressive
gasoline.
every
Remember,
4
Vice
years.
President
Who
Biden,
gives
your
a shit?
response,
That's
and then we're
never-
going to have a
it's
final
never
question for both of you.
My
the
response
issue.
is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live
It's true, he
near
probably doesn't
chemical
understand
plants
this.
that in fact pollute chemical plants and oil
Well, the
plants.
thing that
and
also gets
refineries
me
that
is
pollute.
like,
I used to live near that. when I
like
was
if you
growing
want to
up in
convince
Fremont,
me that
Delaware.
the Democratic
And
Party
all the more
in the
oil
next 4
refineries
years
and
is going to be
markets in the
more
Delaware River
progressive
than there is
while
any place,
dealing with
including the Houston
a
at the time.
social
When my mom get in
environment
the
that
car,
produced
put it in
something like
reverse
Donald
frost,
Trump as the
drive
chief
me to school,
executive
turn away
officer of the
the oil
country.
slick in the window.
Like
That's why
I'm
so
not
many
going to
people
believe
in my
that. I'm
state were
sorry.
dying, getting cancer.
Well, what I mean
Fact
is,
those frontline communities,
whatever
it doesn't matter
happens
what
in
you're paying them, it
2024,
matters how you keep them
Democrats
safe.
will have
what
to
do you do? And you
deal
impose
with a
restrictions on the
serious
pollutions,
third-party challenge, and
coming
they'll
out of
either
those
have to
fence
form
lines.
some kind of de facto
communities.
coalition and
Okay,
absorb
I
those
have one
voters.
final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil
Or
industry?
they're going to have to
falls-
deal
Would you
with
close down the
It
oil
falls-
By the way,
industry?
I would
So,
transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
And here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. Over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry.
Okay.
Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China to
both
do
of you.
it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
China,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our final
rejoin
question.
Paris
Do it,
Accord
dude.
and make
Like,
China
fuck off.
abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best Black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you
might
say
exactly
during
have
your
what he just
inaugural
said. That's
address to
the,
Americans
that's
who
not
did not
nothing.
vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate.
both of you.
Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
I mean, it was a little better than the first debate.
Yeah, I mean, it was. This is true.
But in the sense that like finding a dried piece of chewing gum is better than finding like a fresh and moist piece of chewing gum under a table that you've chosen to sit at in public.
Oh, do you still hear that? Let me turn that shit off. All right. Oh my God, finally, I feel like I finally have some peace where I know this is going to go upload and people are going to see this part of the conversation too, but just like being live and there's like a fucking counter how many people are watching or commenting. It's not the right thing for me to look at. It's not good for me psychologically. It's like why does anybody need those fucking rubrics? Like honestly, why does anybody need that rubric? Just don't.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Poppy, you only had about 8. You know, it's not that much of a head trip.
Yeah, but it has 113 views now, which is like the fastest any one of my videos has gone.
Oh, that's true. Well, it might be people checking out and checking back in too. I don't know how much that counts.
It's mostly that. This is why I prefer to write, because I do go off the rails with anything live, but I was like, fuck it, let me just do it. Like that's one of those things that are just like uncomfortable.
Well, I must admit I didn't watch the whole thing. I just kind of checked out, checked back in, and you're in like a completely different place. You're like you've moved on to chapter 17. I checked out at chapter 11.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but well, I kept waiting for you to finish so that you would send me the Zoom link so we could watch the whole debate, and we didn't actually, I think, succeed until about a third of the way in. But
yeah, but honestly, it doesn't seem like it mattered. You know what I mean?
No, I really think we could have checked in like at any point in the debate, and it would have been about the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
yeah,
it was just at some point, it was just the debate was just like a background.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was better than the first debate in that, I guess, either Trump's own campaign people or just the pure like necessities of the format that he was presented with, like forced him to comply with the general parameters a little bit more. But like that only helped things so much. I mean, like Trump is inherently incapable of giving any
it makes it like less noisy, you know what I mean?
Substance. Well, yeah, but Trump is inherently incapable of giving any positive substance about what specifically he is going to do. He is very good at pointing out like flaws in the Democrat perspective, like ways in which the Democrats have historically fallen short of their stated ideals. But he's not capable of saying like what it is that he's going to do that's going to improve on what they do, other than just I'm gonna make the stock market go up. I'm gonna make the line go up. The stonks are gonna go up. And
I mean, who's gonna? I mean, at this point, who really goes for that? Like in terms of like energy in a base, you need to give people something at this point, right? Because it's been what, like 6, and I haven't talked about this publicly, but like for like the coronavirus relief, do you know like a bunch of people got like debit cards and shit? You heard?
I did not know that. No.
Okay.
We both got 2,400 on our bank account.
Yeah, I was one of the people unlucky enough to get a debit card. It was a debit card for, I think it was like $2,400. So I got this debit card and I was like, first of all, I threw this in the trash because it was under some sort of like random, like business kind of like reply mail bullshit that is like usually spam. And there was like something on the envelope that is just like something I've never heard of. It was like some company name. So I trashed that. And actually most people that receive the debit cards, they trash the debit cards. So then what you have to do is when you trash the debit cards, you have to call in and you have to order a new debit card. When you figure out that, oh yeah, that thing that came in, that was actually my debit card. Because there's no indication, like in the Trump letter, it's this weird thing where it's like, oh, here's your coronavirus relief. We hope that you find it very useful. But there's actually nothing in the fucking letter, and that letter comes separately at some point, and there's no indication of this. So of course you trash that, and then when you call them up, they charge you $17 to send a new card, and then in the midst of using it, like if you're using it and you're like, okay, I wonder how much money is left. You call them up and they ask you for $5. Like it costs $5 to check the fucking balance.
That's good.
So Trump is trying to nickel dime the coronavirus recipients too. Like probably somebody that donated to him, like he's just giving him like a fucking like federal contract. Like, hey, like, yeah, you take care of our like contract for like, oh yeah, coronavirus debit cards, right?
Yeah, that's like Paul Bremer running the like Iraqi coalitional government by himself. Like we're gonna send everybody ATM cards, and that's gonna make up for like the fact that we fired everybody that works for the government in this country, where 90% of people work for the government.
The thing about it is that there's no plausible reason, right, to have this debit card, right? Because first of all, it means that you can't use it for things like mortgages or rent. First of all. Second, like you're introducing all these like weird fucking variables and additional hidden costs. There's no like, unless you're somebody that doesn't have a bank account for whatever reason, like they could have in any case just did the direct deposit like normal people or send a check. But clearly this is such a nakedly grifting contract. It's just a corrupt contract. There's no reason for its existence. Like when these companies talk about, like, we pay so little in taxes, look what we do. Like, what they mean is, these are the fucking companies that exist. They have employees doing all sorts of like nonsense that is just not useful, productive labor, and yet people are getting paid. Someone's getting rich off of this kind of shit. Like, and they're the same people, right? They're the same people that end up paying nothing in taxes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just like the general state of America at this point, is like like various kind of nice sounding social programs that ultimately are more so than anything else just an opportunity for some private company or group of private companies to grift off of it,
Yeah. I mean, that's just that's the pipeline. And like, I mean, that's part of the dual economy, right? We have the flowering of these kinds of, new like little beasts. They're, trying to do the same thing. And, the question as before, like, okay, so we know exactly what happened during coronavirus. We know the extent of the damage to small business. We know the extent of Amazon just filling this niche, right? To what degree are we going to tax away Amazon's recent acquisitions? To what degree are we going to fill in the gap that has, formed due to coronavirus? And again, in terms of wealth, in terms of income, in terms of life expectancy, what exactly are you like? If you can't put something that brings America back to 2019 levels in like Trump's America, you will have failed as an administration, because the long-term project of like getting votes on your side, you're not going to get them, right? Long enough time span, you're just not going to get them. Even with enough money, like, you're going to have, occurrences like Trump 2016,
Yeah. Well, I mean, any project, that's where the conservatives are much smarter than the Democrats, because with their focus on the judicial branch as kind of the nexus of their politics for the last 20 to 30 years, they have put something other than continued victory in the legislative and executive branches at the forefront of their political project. Mm-hmm. And they've ensured that they're like, even if they lose any particular battle, like, there is only so much ground that can be gained by the liberals in the long-term war, unless liberals are willing to really like just sort of burn the whole thing down, which they have kind of clearly shown that they're not willing to do. Well, that's the thing.
That backbone of like that liberal class, like elite media class, right? If you used to be middle class, and instead of falling through the bottom, you've instead, hollowed out the middle class by becoming more affluent. You're not going to want to burn the system down. People look at, 8 years of Obama, and they're like, why were so many people fucking pissed off? Like, why didn't people vote for Hillary Clinton? Clearly, it was supposed to be a continuation of Obama policy, which was true. But the fact is, like, they can't wrap their minds around that, because they were the winners of the Obama economy. They don't understand that all these individual medians, they've been just fucking clobbered, right? They don't see that. They're not visible. And a lot of them are not even Black, right? So, that also makes it not sexy to put on television.
Yeah. I mean, it's also probably fair to say that, like, demobilized and de-energized Black people were probably the difference between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in terms of the coalitions. Yeah. Like, there was a solid contingent of people that switched from Barack Obama to Donald Trump in 2016, but like the number of people that did that as compared to the number of people that voted for Barack Obama and just did not vote in 2016 or voted for some, weird quixotic third party vote is, it pales in comparison. The Democrats just have done very little to inspire confidence that, like, they've done a lot for like performative politics for like sort of the upper end of the bourgeoisie of marginalized groups, like if you're someone who's in the middle class or above and you're Black or Hispanic or Asian or something like that, then you can see some sort of, I guess, vaguely tangible benefit to yourself in in Star Wars or whatever, in Marvel movies, in sort of symbolic political victories. But in terms of actual pragmatic material benefits, you know, like black home ownership, for example, fucking tanked under Barack Obama because he and the administration that he put into power actively chose to favor moneyed interest ahead of average Americans. And so like you can only do that for so long before like different groups of people at different times are going to become disillusioned to a project like that, you know. Like suburban people kind of didn't go along with it in 2016, but are kind of increasingly going along with it in 2018, and now it appears based on polls in 2020. And you know, you sort of see minorities and poor people kind of checking out a little bit, and we'll see, I guess, come November 3rd if the shortfall is made up there by people switching from either not voting or voting for Trump to voting for Democrats. But you know, you can only favor this sort of like symbolic or you know, totally quixotic politics for so long before like the people that would be your sort of fundamental natural organic base just check out, you know. And that's completely natural. It's not like a morally damnable thing as like a lot of Democrats would hold it. It's like the most normal and understandable thing in the world.
Predictable. Exactly. Absolutely predictable. You can see it coming and you're like, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything about it. I mean, okay.
Well, it's not only am I not going to do anything about it in terms of the material politics that I support, but I'm going to double down on the sort of like moral grandstanding aspect of it. You know, I'm going to double down on the like, you're a bad person if you don't vote for this party. And I mean, I will say it's a little hard to tell from the title of your stream earlier, but I understand that you're not personally voting for Joe Biden. I will. I am going to vote for Joe Biden for
2.5 hours of stream, and I didn't make it clear that, by the way, guys, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. And it says voting third party, and that's the fucking thumbnail. But it's still not clear when you watch it.
No, it really wasn't, honestly. No, I commented several times, like, the title of this stream is why I'm not voting for Joe Biden. But I understand that.
Well, you got a lot more than that, though.
Yeah, I personally, I will vote for him because I have personal familial interest in seeing particular policies implemented by Donald Trump and possibly not by other Republicans overturned. You know, I am married to somebody that is personally affected by the travel ban, for example. So seeing that overturned would be like personally advantageous to my family. You know, seeing a mild relaxing of immigration restrictions that were imposed under Donald Trump would be personally advantageous to my family. But I mean, beyond those sort of like narrow personal reasons that I intend to vote for Joe Biden, like other people should have like personal reasons to vote for politicians. You know, like that's like it's this weird sort of thing that the Democrats have created over time where like it's like if you're anything other than like, I don't know, like a trans black woman, you can't possibly expect anything from the politicians that you vote for. You know,
and like, even then, like, what are you gonna get? Like, as a trans black one, what are you gonna get? Really?
Well, you might get.
You could join the army. You could join the army.
Yeah, you're allowed to join the military. But I mean, it's like not only can you not expect anything, but like you are wrong to expect anything. You know, I mean, that's the thing about the Democrat pitch that I don't quite understand is like you're not specifically offering anything in terms of like what I can expect in terms of my personal life. You're not offering to take away like the worry that I have about like, what if I have to go to the hospital? You know, you're not taking away the worry about like, what if I lose my job and I have to pay my bills and I have to pay rent and things like that. But you are like taking away like my ability to make like specific jokes that when I was like 12 I was allowed to make, you know, or you're taking away like my ability to laugh at specific South Park episodes from 20 years ago or something like
Yeah.
that. You know,
That's a very
like,
clear choice for so many people. Like, that's such a clear choice. Like, you're not giving me anything other than I can't make like my favorite joke, right? Like you're gonna be like, fuck you. Like, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. Like in a two-party system, like if one side is telling you can't make jokes, but we're giving you nothing else anyway, like it makes that side is like the good side, right? Like that's just how it works.
Well, also like it's not even like there are various like I guess PC or whatever positions that are not specifically wrong, but you're not going to win people to those positions if you don't offer them something like in return for engaging in like morally advantageous or morally righteous behavior. You know, like the idea in some abstract sense that it's a good thing to do is not going to be enough to like there's a lot of people that like they're not connected to the thing that you're saying is harming some other group that they possibly have nobody in their personal life that connects to. So if you're not offering something in like the leftist position on this is very clear. You know, it's like you don't stop saying the N-word or you don't stop making like offensive jokes or whatever because it makes you a good person. You stop saying it because it is deleterious to solidarity. You know, like you do this because it is standing in the way of you getting what you personally want out of this government. Like the people that might support your positions will be less likely to ally with you if you engage in certain kind of behaviors. Like there's a quid pro quo element to that is still a little bit abstract for the very depoliticized and desacralized people of the United States in the year 2020. But like there is an understandable element to that. But what the Democrats are offering, I don't get it exactly. You know, it's like
well, that's the thing. But here's the thing. I do get it because I know people, I have relatives like this. I know friends like this that are like, generically speaking, they're into Joe Biden, right? They say things like Hillary Clinton was a good person, and I think she really had the best interests of America at heart.
Well, you're just dumb if you believe that. I'm sorry.
I know, but like, there's a category of person that believes that. That category of person is the person
it's the category of people that don't come from Haiti.
It's the category of people that, like, you know, in the 1960s when like liberal media like started, like they would tune in, they would get their messaging from there, right? They are themselves like, you know, socially progressive. They want to see like, you know, they might be like very good people, but they are the type of people that have, you know, done exceptionally well under this kind of economy. They, you know, they grew up to be, you know, a good and kind and empathetic. They don't want to see figures like Donald Trump. They're perfectly happy to see figures like Obama. If you start, you know, the Obama presidency, you know, in the stock market, and then you leave the Obama presidency, you know, you've made all this money, right? Or you had these promotions at your job, right? If you have like a managerial kind of job, or you could be some other kind of like working professional. Your understanding, like it's just like I'm seeing this more and more as I get older. Like it's so impossible to divorce the things that you grew up with, the things that you've experienced. It's impossible to divorce that from like any wider value judgments that you'll take. Like, you know, I'll be doing like a similar thing with Dan Schneider on Sunday, and when I put that up, like we'll be talking about Joe Biden with Joe. You know, his life of labor experiences absolutely color how he views, you know, what is being put on offer for him, right? It just has to be. If you're an Obama voter that did exceptionally well, that has to color. You have to look at everybody else and say, like, why aren't you okay with this? Why aren't you okay with Obama? I remember like thinking like when I was just like I had like generic jobs or whatever during the Obama administration. And I remember thinking like, you know, I do find it really kind of weird that his approval rating is under 50% all the time. And he's not really that popular anymore. And yet these are the same numbers that George Bush had. Like, isn't there a true qualitative difference between the presidency of George Bush and the presidency of Obama? And the fact is, there is, like, literally there is. Obama is a substantially better president, but the fact is, like, the approval rating is kind of the same. The unpopularity is the same. The propaganda, that used to come, like, now it's coming only from kind of one side, and then the propaganda, on the liberal side, it's let's cover up everything that's going wrong. Let's not discuss that. Like, let's not talk about the fentanyl overdoses. Like, again, we only really start hearing about it in 2017 because for all the things, all the bad things you could say about Trump administration, the fact is, the Trump win, it showed you something critical that would otherwise have been ignored. There is a population out there, right? They are Trump voters. They are the fentanyl, overdose victims. They are the detritus of NAFTA. They are the detritus of the bank bailouts. They are the ones who had that minimum wage from the very beginning of their lives, never really went above it. And although inflation has cut into their earnings, their $22 an hour that they need now just to keep with inflation, they're not even allowed to have that. Trump showed that this kind of person exists, right? That kind of person exists. And we know this because, unlike Clinton, he had more like individual small donations than Clinton ever had, right? And of course, Bernie Sanders had more than all of them. Big money was decisive for Donald Trump in the last 2 weeks of the election, more so probably than the Comey letter. So anyway, I can keep talking, but I know you got to go to sleep.
I do, but I will say, I think it's possible to overstate that. I mean, by and large, if you look at the statistics that were generated after the 2016 election, I mean, Trump's election was more specifically fueled by the kind of people that fuel most conservative bases. I mean, I mean, Chapo's a little overly reductive, but when they say like the Ski-Doo dealership owners, that is certainly probably a larger part of Trump's base than the the fentanyl overdose crowd. I mean, those are people that by and large just don't vote. And that's really,
the point is, in our system, that number, it's not the highest number, right? People have gotten more affluent than not. I do believe that, but it's a high enough number that's going to swing elections. Like that's the reality, right? So if your thing is like, I'm a Democrat and I want to win, you have to be aware that that number is large enough. The people that hate NAFTA, that number was large enough in the Rust Belt that gave Trump the win. Like that's literally true. There's no way people could deny that anymore. Maybe at the beginning when 2016 first happened, but that's just, as far as I'm concerned, that's just consensus fact now.
Well, yeah, but I also don't know how winnable back to the Democrats those people are, because a lot of them have engaged in very elaborate psychological justifications for why they voted the way they did.
Well, a bunch of them will vote for Biden, right?
A bunch. Well, yeah, I mean,
will vote for Biden.
I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that voted for Obama that did not vote for Hillary that are going to vote for Biden too. I mean, I don't know that it's exactly going to be. I don't know that it's specifically going to be attributable to any one group, but I mean, ultimately, like, I fundamentally agree with like your position as to why you're not personally going to vote for Biden, even though I am going to vote for Biden for the personal reason that, like, my wife can't vote, but she would vote for Biden for, like, very personal reasons if she could. So, like, I feel like as a household, I need to kind of represent that. But, like, ultimately, there's not a lot of solid reasons to vote for anybody in our current system. Like, either you are participating in the active evil,
even third party, honestly.
No, like, like you are either participating in the active evil that is the duopoly, like the capitalist duopoly that controls the political horizons that are available to the average person, or you are engaging in the largely crank behavior that is like the American third party, like, voting apparatus. I mean, I'm not saying
don't you feel kind of silly? Like, don't you feel like, I'm not sure if you voted third party before, but I feel fucking silly, putting down, because ultimately I know, like, it's meaningless. Maybe those numbers are going to mean something down the road. people will see like, hey, Democratic Party clearly is losing support here, or there. These are the numbers. We're going to need some kind of coalition if Democrats want to be at all competitive from this point on. I think we're going to eventually hit that point. So that's why I do it. But, it does feel silly to do it. Like, in 2008, I wasn't even going to fucking vote for Obama. Like I was still kind of a Marxist then, that was like, I was like, okay, this looks good, but is it really? I was like, all right. And of course, like it turned out to be exactly like it was. And one more thing, I was going to talk about this in the stream, but it went a little too long. This like, what do you think about this like thing that we've been hearing for years and years now? Not just in political discourse, but people say all the time, like, oh my goodness, look at the average American's like anti-intellectualism and distrust of experts. That is very bad. It strikes me as like when people say that even if you could sort of make the argument that a distrust in experts is bad, you have to contend with the fact that so much of the so-called fucking trust us, we're experts expertise over the last 50 years has been absolutely abysmal. JFK and Johnson decided to do their tax hikes because they thought, you know what, this isn't going to lead to anything bad, and eventually it led to exactly where we are now. Bill Clinton, passed George Bush's NAFTA with some like minor changes, and that was supposed to create some good in America. And the fact is, it did create a lot of good in America, but that good came at the expense of certain medians in America that then go out and vote for Donald Trump and like give life to this like radical base. And those people, they do have a reason to distrust experts. Okay, like when bad things started happening, the white community, like the 90s onwards, and people started like having their mortality increase, like from all causes, they would look back and they'll say, people told me this was going to be good. They told me to vote for Bill Clinton, that he's going to help me. And like all those prophets, like they went a certain way. Some people did well, but enough people did poorly enough that would eventually become the Trump base. That's just true, right? And they have a reason to distrust experts. All these years, all the various things that have been parroted, like whether it was Alan Greenspan, or whether it was like the Democratic Leadership Committee coming in 1984 after Reagan's win, saying we have to do things differently. We have to be the new Democrats. We have to, eliminate the so-called special interests in our party, which is like blacks, gay people, whatever, and we have to replace that with business interests that could actually fund our activities and actually make us win. So that was the calculation, that was the expertise. It led us to Trump. That's just literally true. Bill Clinton was supposed to be good for black people. Okay, now after all of that, right, we have less black wealth than before Bill Clinton came into office. That is a reality that nobody is contending with. And when they say things like dismissively, like, oh, they don't trust experts, they don't believe in expertise, they're so anti-intellectual. Well, in the areas of their lives that really fucking matter the most, expertise has never served them well. Okay, what do you expect?
I agree with that.
You radicalized that base, you created that base, you created the anti-intellectuals, you created the people that don't trust experts. All the people now that are willing to believe Trump, that masks don't work and that lockdowns are shit and that coronavirus is meaningless and they're not going to get hurt by it, all of that came about from all the other lies that were fed under the guise of expertise. So now people don't believe anything, and it's like, oops, and what's the solution there, right? Like if you think you want to defeat the space, what exactly is a strategy to win that part back that's been so fucking destroyed and processed over the past 50 years?
Yeah. I mean, I would slightly disagree in that I think when you talk about Trump's base, I think it's more accurate to say that Trump's base are like people that have left like deranged comments on conservative blogs for the last like 15 to 20 years, or the people that said, like, if you've ever read like local newspaper comment sections for like letters to the editor pages, like like the person that's like, well, I mean, really what needs to happen is that somebody needs to have like a Glock under their pillow at all times. Like that's the kind of the real base of the Trump party. But in the sense that like I think the basic thing of what you're saying is correct in that like a lot of expert technocratic solutions to problems have ultimately made people's lives worse, and they're not wrong from a sort of like intuitive perspective to be fundamentally distrustful of those same like expert technocratic opinions now, but I think most of those people that have that kind of opinion, they've just kind of disengaged entirely. That they're more the people that like that would vote for Kanye if they're going to vote for anybody in this election, or would vote for some like Black
I wonder if
Swan.
Kanye is getting like, I wonder if Kanye, like you said, like is like helping a tiny, it's only like 3% more of the Black vote go to Trump this time around. Like I wonder if like Kanye just like signaling this.
Maybe, but I think the perhaps the more important thing, a lot of there was a lot of criticism amongst liberals of the economic anxiety argument for why Trump came into power in 2016 that I think was
it
fair.
was. Now it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it wasn't. It's not specifically right to say that like there's a lot of people that voted for Trump because of specifically economic anxiety. Because in general, like if you look at the voting demographics in 2016, people with less money did vote for Hillary at higher proportions. But anxiety in general, not like economic anxiety specifically, like personal economic anxiety, but like anxiety as to the direction of the country, like awareness of like the fentanyl ridden hollers and the declining lifespan of middle-aged men, especially white men, that like there is a class of people that saw that can see, regardless of their own personal prosperity, that like America is not in a particularly good place in a lot of respects for a lot of people in the last like 20 to 30 years or so. And they're not voting socialist or whatever. They're not voting even Democrat. They're going to vote Republican because their response is going to be fundamentally reactionary. Their response is going to be like, we need to bring back some sort of past instantiation of like social organization to counter these clear problems that we are facing right now, because they don't have either the imagination or the like personal motivation to see the kinds of changes made that need to be made. Either they can't imagine how you could fix it, or they are personally economically disincentivized to see the kinds of changes made that need to be made. So instead they focus on like, it's the Mexican rapists that are primarily causing the problems, or the welfare going to people in the inner cities, or too much welfare going to Democrat-run cities in blue states, or things like that. That's not specifically people like some of those people might have voted for Obama in 2008, 2012, because Obama was above all else a primarily good marketer of himself. I mean, it's funny in retrospect that the conservative criticism of Obama that he was like primarily a celebrity more than he was anything else was kind of true. Like it's not wrong to say that like Obama was above all else like a very clever piece of marketing, or like a very pernicious piece of hype. But it's right for the wrong reasons. But there's a lot of people that could see that, and could sort of like at the bottom of their skin or whatever, like feel that there was something wrong with the way the country was going under Obama, which is really the way it was going under Bush, the way it was going under Clinton, the way it was going under Reagan, and even the way that it was going under Carter. But perhaps under Obama is where it really flowered, with the very like terrible and like demoralizing recovery that we experienced under him. The idea that like even when we're getting better from a denuded place, we still like the way that we get better is by like having a bunch of young people work for Uber or these like terrible like ununionized jobs. Like there's a wide class of people that are not necessarily like purely reactionary, but are situationally reactionary to the fact that like there's a lot of stuff going wrong in the country right now that they are otherwise powerless to deal with other than by voting for reactionary politics.
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree with that. And also like, yeah, it's not so easy to just pin Trump voters on a like just a generic kind of economic line, but definitely when it comes to, again, like the specific subsections that are the only ones that are necessary to actually swing an election one way or the other. The people in the Rust Belt that did say, I'm worried about NAFTA, right? It did have a negative impact on me, or at least believed it, right? Whether or not it actually happened, or the people that are just kind of like, like for example, like white males without a college degree. Yes, it is true that doesn't necessarily lead to economic instability and an economic anxiety, but we can say that as a general rule, a white person in today's world without a college degree is going to be suffering as a trend, right? As a trajectory, economic anxiety, whether or not they're able to talk about it, whether or not they really understand what that is, whether or not it's something that they could easily pinpoint to like a specific cause, whether or not they could like ascribe a solution to either Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. But along those lines, like that critical enough piece of the electorate, it's always liable to swing, right? And I mean, Trump exploited it fairly well in that regard.
Well, there's always a tiny fraction of the electorate that will swing one way or the other for one reason or another, but it's a sign of the critical failure of the Democrats that like they are contingent on that tiny fraction of the electorate not swinging away from them. They require 100,000 people in 3 states to not vote in a kind of stupid way in order for their entire political project to have any traction whatsoever. So I mean, I guess
because think about it. Yeah, it's because they refuse to take that 0.6% onto their platform. It's just a step too far, right? It's too damaging in terms of actually getting donations from the corporate donors, right? If you start messaging in this way, you're going to end up like Bernie Sanders, where you're bereft of everything except the 250 million that you will get, which does not make you competitive in a modern race, right? So that's kind of like the catch-22. So they refuse to like disarm. They refuse to say fuck it, small donations only. They refuse to really get that 0.6% of the electorate that they say is so critical. And of course, they don't even think about that 45% that's just sitting around, right? And like it's kind of I don't want to I don't want to make this argument too much because it could be taken the wrong way, but the more that I think about like voter suppression in America, like explicit, like illegal voter suppression, or even stuff that's legal that shouldn't be legal, a lot of it is starting to strike me like it's almost like the Russia 2016 narrative, where you want to blame something for your loss, and of course that's not because like voter suppression isn't real. Of course it's real. Republicans all the time, they're trying to reverse laws. They're trying to unconstitutionally and wrongly, keep Black people from voting. They are in fact successful at doing that. So that's definitely true, right? There's no way to deny that. But the percent that you lose to voter suppression, or the percent that you lose to the Green Party vote, that is a much smaller number than the number of people that just generically speaking, they just don't want to vote because they don't believe you, right? And there's nothing that you can do, right? Or there's nothing that you're willing to do to actually bring them out. Bernie Sanders wasn't totally successful at it, but if the Democratic Party wants to say, we're not going to do, we're not going to do large donations anymore. This is going to be, a Bernie Sanders type operation. They could easily, message appropriately and build the kind of connections that, they've been building before, and actually get, regular people because again, 250 in the general, right there, it's hard to see the lack of enthusiasm in the Trump base. There's some enthusiasm, not a lot, counter acting the kind of more robust enthusiasm in Bernie Sanders. Maybe like he was more vulnerable. I mean, he's a very imperfect candidate, whether it's like everything from policies to his age to his skin color to I mean, you said this before, he wasn't like the most labor intensive hardworking senator. He was in some ways kind of lazy throughout his tenure.
I mean,
he's kind of imperfect in many regards.
That always bothered me, was like the sort of leftists that were like, no, like Bernie Sanders wasn't like he was actually a very involved congressperson. Like, no, he wasn't. What are you talking about? Like, he wasn't the worst congressperson, but like by and large, it's not like he was going onto this floor of Congress every day and, decrying the decadence of the West or something like that. He wasn't hitting all of the notes that he could have been. And he didn't vote against all of the things that he should have. He voted against the Iraq War, but he voted in favor of the Afghanistan War, and he voted in favor of what was it, the 1998 bill that basically made like regime change in Iraq the official U.S. policy, even if it didn't specifically like vote war powers to the executive branch. Like, he was a very imperfect candidate in a lot of ways. And, like ultimately like you are absolutely right that like it is easy to overstate the effect of voter suppression, but it's entirely true to say that like probably the margin of voter suppression that happens is enough and more than enough
100%
to swing the election for Republicans when they need to. But it shouldn't be.
Exactly.
Like,
that's the point.
Like Democrats should not be running on a platform and running with a reliance on donors that requires that margin of voters that are able to be like summarily cut out of the political process like so easily in the way that Republicans do. And ultimately, I mean, as I said before, like they're like until you excise from your brain the idea that
I can't see your face. I haven't seen you in like 2 years. What are you doing?
Oh, sorry, Poppy. I know you like to see my face.
No, it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it has been a couple of years. Until you excise from your brain the idea that voting is anything other than a very minor form of harm reduction. Like maybe at some point, like 20 years from now, after the climate feedback loop has reached a point of no return, we will have like a third party wave that comes in and completely fixes everything. But
like if there wasn't money in politics in the way that we have, like legalized bribery, then voting would absolutely be much more than that, right? Like that's kind of like
that's
the most critical thing. Like every politician would be running like a Bernie Sanders platform. You know what I mean? If you don't need to worry about satisfying big business, if I can make whatever promises you want to make, and if you could get enough people into your promises, who cares? Say whatever you want.
Money donations. I mean,
the other guy, they have to do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, you're underground the reality that, like, in some ways, the single biggest obstacle to any kind of like substantive change right now is the fact that there is a significant volume of people that still believe in like the mainstream media as a source of like truth, or at least
liberal media is worse than Fox.
Fox.
Like, don't you think
Fox is,
like watching MSNBC, like seriously, like watching it seriously? I'm not saying that the things that they spread on MSNBC are necessarily worse, but to seriously watch something like that and to like be like, oh yeah, I will now pay attention like to this 30-minute like Rachel Maddow segment. I will really take to heart what happens here in this interview on Ari Melber's show. Like, there is something very fucking twisted about that, right? Like it's just and it's weird because it's not the same kind of like rejection of reality that we're getting on the Republican side, but it's a rejection of a different kind, or more like it's a limiting. It's like it's this weird thing where, like, imagine if the world as you know it and as you see it, you can now only view it like zoomed in, like 1,000%, right?
well,
Like
there's a lot.
that's reality, but it's shortening off so much, right? So that it's effectively not reality anymore.
Well, in a lot of ways, there's a lot more smoke and mirrors that go into like the liberal media. Like Fox is very dishonest and disconnected from reality in a lot of ways. But like, if you watch it long enough, their ultimate argument is like, you shouldn't vote for Joe Biden because it's not as good for big business. Yeah. Which is like the actual like honest argument against Joe Biden if that's your worldview. Like if you watch it long enough, you'll get
I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that Joe Biden is less good for big business. I mean, listen, you could bring on big business in ways where things are really fucking lucrative for them. If you say like, fuck it, we're going to do a $10 trillion infrastructure plan and I'm going to give my contracts to like, name any business that you want. It can be lucrative. It can be beneficial, but that's not the power block that we have. That's not, that's just not within the realm of possibility. And you still have enough people that are worried about the fucking deficit, right? That's still part of the conversation. That is, the deficit is still part of the conversation to some degree, and there's going to be much more the conversation under Republicans. But right now, it's very obvious that big money has thrown in I think Trump has raised something like 700 billion, 750 billion. Big business has absolutely, sort of solidified thus far, right? Who knows? Like last week, we had a 2-week surprise, right? Back in 2016, that decided the election with the sudden influx of like Mercer money and others. But right now, it's pretty clear that big business has a line behind Biden. And honestly, if you're a big business person, I think you could stomach some fucking like tax hikes to like maybe back to the Obama levels in exchange for, okay, no more of this protectionist racket, right? Like the protectionist industries are not that large in America. So no protectionism. You get like the big, financial industry, like you bring that back, right? You promise contracts to, whoever's going to build, the $2 trillion in your infrastructure plan, assuming that it gets passed. Like that is lucrative, right? Like the weird thing is when I hear Republicans talking about, I want to vote for Romney because he's a fucking businessman. He'll run the country as a business. And yet when they're in office, like they never fucking seem to understand that, do they? Like Reagan is in office and he spends literally $1 trillion on redundant defense systems, right? Stuff that is not necessary. We already have like a certain kind of missile or a certain kind of shield, and he contracts out like 4 or 5 different versions of them simply for the point of making like useless fucking work that doesn't benefit anybody. So business has a way of coalescing, and so far they have absolutely coalesced around Joe Biden, not Trump. You could see this in the financial numbers.
I think that's true, but I also think that's true because the overall tenor of the country has swung so hard.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course. It's not because they're good people, right? It's not because we're the good woke capitalists that want to get the bad guy out of office. That's not what's going on, right?
If Trump
the other way, right?
Looked like he was ahead for, like, if the riots had swung things more to the right than it looks like they will have, then I absolutely think that Trump would have more corporate donations behind them. But he doesn't, because they didn't, because we're at a place as a as a consuming society right now that we want to have Nike tell us that we're good people for putting Black Lives Matter hashtags on our profile pictures or whatever. Yeah. But
I love that photo of like on Facebook. There was like some like news story, like the Golden Girls episode with like the white ladies wearing like mud masks that has been eliminated from the back catalog.
Yeah, that's very silly.
And then like some like black girl responded like, we never asked for this. You guys are doing absolutely everything except for the stuff that we asked for, right? Which is just true, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, if you're not someone that directly benefits from Black Lives Matter, let's say that you are like a white, managerial class type of liberal, like, when you watch your fucking, Golden Girls reruns, you'll be like, you know what? I like that. I like that. That makes me feel good. When you go to your like fucking like anti-racist training and they tell you that, you have massive white guilt because you need to sort of like, repent, and you need to sort of like, be, like wash away your sins. The reason why you feel such white guilt and you're willing to like accept these like completely insane fucking perspectives is, deep down that nothing going on in that anti-racist training and nothing that you can do personally will be able to bridge the wealth gap between you and the average Black person. So all that you're given, like, you're essentially like, a lot of these white liberals are like, good people. They're not doing anything except like, working nice jobs. I mean, why wouldn't you work a nice job if you had that opportunity? Paying the taxes that they're required to pay, which is not that high. And, doing their like liberal media consumption. And, they're a victim too in this regard, because it's like like America wants to get rid of its fucking like endless guilt. Like, Germany got rid of at least part of its guilt, like with its reparations for Holocaust victims, with its like apologies, with like, the kind of like anti-Nazi like free speech laws. And you can disagree with some of those policies, but the fact is, here's a country that seriously tried to deal with it, and here's America that hasn't. And all we have then is like a bunch of fucking like whiny liberals that go around like, boo-hooing like their white guilt, because there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing that they could offer this Black person. So they just have like, in this kind of like endless fucking like decadence and luxury, they have their emotions to offer, right? They have the self-flagellation to offer. They have all these like symbolic gifts to offer, because nobody's going to come in with a fucking tax plan to like make them give more actually physically and redistribute their wealth. Like, that's not going to happen. And they know that. And they vote for the people that, force them to feel that way, because right now those emotions are just kind of all that they fucking have.
Yeah. Well, it's the supreme irony of politics right now that, like, if we were to pass like, $10 trillion reparations or something like that to the Black community, like, the conservatives, it would be like they had like nutted all the way to the moon. Like they would in some ways they
you can't do that. You can't do 10 trillion reparations. You have to sneak them in. You have to sneak
but they would be so happy
strategy.
Because there's no argument that you could ever make to them again that they would ever feel even the twinge. Like Ben Shapiro, no matter how much he argues right now, like, there is some level of his argument that grants that like Black people were fucked over in a way that they weren't remunerated, So like if you gave like a giant chunk of reparations or something like that, they would be so happy, because it would mean that they would never have to even grant lip service to that shit again. And liberals
to any
would
like
have
enduring problems that might consider after reparations.
And liberals would have like the ultimate blue balls, because they would have no idea how to like comport themselves in a world where like there was some sort of like material parity created between like Black and white people, because ultimately even if it's true that there is a great disparity between Black and white people, and it is true, like, that's not like the actual material reality of it is not the specific thing that like inflames the liberal imagination. It's like the sort of abstract guilt that it engenders in people, like the inability to enjoy like the fruits of the lifestyle that are afforded to you by your inheritance and by just sort of your passive existence in the society. And so like the expunging of it by this sort of like white guilt industrial complex, which is not entirely misplaced, but is mostly just very silly. Like it fills a very potent need inside of people, and if you took that away with like reparations, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. You know, you and I have talked about like what could drive like black people away from the Democrat Party toward the Republican Party, and I really do think reparations would be it. You know, like if you created a class of people that like had some sort of like material wealth to defend, and also like less of a sense that like there is something specific that's being denied to them by like one party being in power versus the other one. Like you might act like, and in some ways as a socialist, like sort of Marxist, you know, there's a part of me that's like, good, you know, if that happened, like things could sort of sort themselves along much more rational lines instead of this sort of like quasi-spiritual like racial element that everything seems to work itself out along in America right now. But I think we're a long way away from that, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your personal perspective.
Yeah. Well, one thing that worries about me about reparations is I could just fucking imagine some sort of like sloppy ass reparations package that is just like direct cash payments, like that's the form of reparations. And we know, like, because here's the thing, like we know the studies of people that win the lottery, right? Most people that win the lottery like they go bankrupt at a very kind of like scary time frame, right? Like very quickly. Like you give random people just random fucking money, you know that this isn't going to end very well, like because there's like no fucking structure to this money. There's no like multiplier effect to this money. Like giving cash to someone directly is very different than indirect means, where like, you know, a government is able to like eliminate like 20 different fucking middlemen and other inefficiencies. Like you could have potentially like really well run slick reparations package program that, you know, it could have like a direct cash component. I think in fact that's necessary. I think it would be an insult to, like, you know, if you have a reparations package that part of it wouldn't be like a literal fucking like direct lump cash, you know, some payment, right? Like you need that, but you need to make sure that the money goes as far as possible, because the one thing you don't want is you don't want this to be a fucking like random lottery situation where a person wins the lottery and loses, and suddenly what do you have like 10 years later? Black people as fucking broke as before, and conservatives saying, see, told you something about that culture, right? Something about that culture. So, you know, like when I think of reparations, I think of it as something that essentially gets like snuck in to some degree, at least. Like the direct payments can't be, but something that gets snuck into like a broad class-based program that says, you know, something like, hey, you know, if you happen to have like this differential in wealth, we need to do XYZ to bring you up. Sometimes it's going to be white people, more often than not it's going to be black people, but you know, you need something broad based that people feel like they get something out of it. And also, you know, the genie's out of the fucking bottle. We seem to be spending and not taxing, and that's going on. So that's like MMT logic. I suppose that as long as we have enough real resources in the country, meaning like a population that, unlike like the rest of the fucking industrialized West, we're not aging out. In fact, people are getting younger and more diverse, and people are having more and more children because we have a fucking vibrant immigrant community. And you know, that's worthwhile. We have a population that can be taxed in the future. We have so many natural resources. We have so much education we can leverage if we so choose, right? We could say we're going to ban all private schools and everything gets funded, you know, weighted like average of like, you know, all 50 states per capita student of all property taxes. Like, you know, everything has to be equitable in that regard. You could have a massive turnaround. So, you know, this is like, I would probably target reparations in ways that aren't just like, there needs to be some race specific things, but it shouldn't be just race specific, because if anything, like that creates too much resentment that creates too much pushback. That creates the wrong kind of conversations, right? The conversations are, well, why did he get something and we don't get nothing? Like, I'm doing bad too, which is true, you know, but like, you can't make a wonky ass argument to the person telling you that, oh yeah, you know, you're doing bad too, but on average, you know, like this average Black family, they're actually doing worse than you. So just stomach it, right? And maybe we'll help you, you know, when your turn comes. Like, you know, nobody wants to wait for their fucking turn, and they shouldn't, right? Which is the point.
Well, I would basically agree with that, but I think the real solution here is we need to invest in a time machine and go back and do the reparations like 150 years ago, and that would solve a lot of the issues that we're facing now. But I got to go to bed, man. I got to work at I got to get up at 5:30 tomorrow for work.
It was very nice talking. Love you.
Indeed, it was. I love you too, Poppy. Bye bye.